Please remain standing for the moment of silence in honor of the servicemen and women who have served and continue to serve our country, both here and abroad. Roll call.
Counselor Anderson. Crow.
Here.
D'Arcangelo. Kinnon. Lucy. Matheson. Murphy. Nestor. Spatafora. Altrino. Bucci.
Here. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're actually going to start our evening off with introducing the recipients of the 2012 City Scholarships and the presentation of those awards. I am going to turn it over to Councilor Lucy, who is the Chairperson of Finance, in terms of explaining how the money is actually allocated for these scholarships. So, Councilor Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the generosity of many Malden residents, when they check off a box on an excise bill, there's money set aside to give out scholarships. In this day and age, I think anyone that knows that sending a child to college, any little bit helps. So the city, in their own way, they have been doing this for a number of years. There's a committee that's set up through the city, and the committee decides who gets the scholarships, and those folks are here tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Lucy. Presentation will be done with Councilor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam President. As Councilor Lucy said, it really is, what I really like about this is residents, supporting residents to go into higher education. And we have people that apply come from high school students that are going on to college students that are continuing, and adults that are going back to school. So it really is very encumbersome of lots of different people. So it was set up by Councilor at Large at the time, Joan Chason, in 1997. So we've been doing that since then. So I am very pleased to announce the winners of the scholarship this year. The way the process that is done is it's a blind. You know, we don't know the names or any identifying information on any of the scholarships. It's really about people that have are in the city, lived in the city, have given back to the city, and sort of their future plans. So we have actually, Lorraine Danka, who is the chair of there, could not be here tonight, but we do have Jeannie McQuardo representing the committee. All right, so now for the winners. We have 10 scholarships to give out. So the first one is Shirley Wong. You want to stand up, Shirley? Mallory McDonald. Sheila Rachels. Jenna Loftus. Anna McGuire. Marissa Cagno. Jacqueline Spain. And Kami Ayuk. Can we call them up? Can we have everybody come on up and we'll take a picture all together? We have two others that could not be here with us this evening, but that's Alicia Bryan and Kiara Amos, who couldn't be with us tonight, but they also were awarded a scholarship. Take a picture.
Stand up here. Just get in front.
Did they tell you how much it was or no?
Okay. All righty, well, we do want to congratulate all the recipients, and also want to thank Counselor Crowe and the other members of the committee who obviously had pulled the information together and had this reoccurrence of a very special moment. And I just heard one of my colleagues ask what the value of the scholarships were, and I believe they were $500. So that was a good kickoff to at least a couple books at college. But in any event, our next item on our agenda tonight is to set a guest that will come before us. Will include the mayor, the Public Works Commission, the Director of Public Works, our controller, and representative of Pioneer Consulting will come before us and speak to our projected increases in the city's water and sewer rates for 2013. So I will ask, to start that particular discussion off, I will ask the Mayor Malden if we could all please stand for the mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the City Council, good evening, and I appreciate your indulgence on what I consider to be the most vexing part of our budget. The last time I was here on May 29th, I presented some preliminary figures that I thought were going to be required to sustain us in fiscal year 2013 when it comes to water and sewer rates. In a nutshell, and I've tried to reduce this down because I know it's a very complicated issue, the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority assesses cities and towns that are part of their district for supplying water and sewer services. We have no control over that assessment unless, we take steps to better account for water and sewer services during the course of the fiscal year. So if we did nothing else, what I'm showing is that the water assessment from the MWRA is 11.7%. If we do nothing else, I am showing that the assessment from the MWRA for sewer is 5.5%. Those combined and when weighted results in a 7.6% increase in the MWRA assessment for fiscal year 2013. We are going to provide you, a chart that will show all the cities and towns and their applicable rate increases. So 7.6% out of the gate. If we did nothing else, that's what the assessment increase would be. Couple that with what we're proposing with the reorg and trying to collapse various services that now occur throughout the city under one department called Water Utilities. The increase is 8.11%. So that 7.6% from the MWRA plus the proposed changes we've suggested amounts to an 8.1% increase. So what happened between May 29th and now? Some of the changes we've made since we last met is we have removed what I have been suggesting to the council that we do at some point, and that is do the appropriate road, curb, and sidewalk measures on the streets that are being done through the SRF program. As many of you know by now, the SRF program, otherwise known as the State Revolving Fund, provides for the water main repairs and then just a little milling after the water main is installed. So the best way to describe this is if you're driving around and you see a road with the, sort of a zipper, along the road that covers the water main, that's what that program pays for. In my mind, that's not an acceptable condition to leave the road in. So I think we need to, go in and give it the appropriate reconstruction that it deserves. And while we're there, we should also look left and we should look right and pay attention to the curbing that might be broken, the sidewalks that should be repaired, the trees that should be planted. In other words, taking a holistic approach. So what the original thought process was back in May 29th is that we would float the bond upwards of $5 million to accomplish that task. But based on what I've heard from the City Council, we have since removed that bond measure, and we will take that up during the capital improvement program process in the fall. The only thing I don't like about that is that, we now wait till November, October, November, before we address, those streets from Phase 1 and Phase 2 that, have been left with this zipper on the road to cover the water main. But what it does accomplish is obviously brings the rates down, brings them more in line with, I think, what the council wants. So that bond measure has been removed. The other thing that has been removed since we spoke May 29th is the reserve, a $500,000 reserve. And that's always been used in the past. Not sure if it was that amount, but in case collections were off, you never want to, obviously, as all of you know, have the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund end in a deficit. So by removing that reserve, we are now basing collections on 100%. That all the collections will come in, everything will be copacetic in June of 2013. Whether that happens, remains to be seen. So by removing those two items, that's how we start getting down to this 8.1% increase, give or take. But let the record show that even with these adjustments, we still have a major problem, and that is the city's unaccounted water remains at an unacceptable level for me, and I know for you. Roughly 30% or $1 million, it's unaccounted, and we must find out where it is, and that's the plan of attack that I've suggested in the budget proposal with this reorganization that I've suggested to you. And if we are able to do that and find out, where the water's going, react quicker to when water leaks are detected, to educate people about consumption, then I think we'll be more in line with where I think we need to be. Right now, the chart that you are about to receive, if you haven't already, we are third out of the 22 cities and towns in terms of the upcoming rate increase, third highest. And as I've told you in January when I assumed office, that's not going to cut it in this competitive state that we now live in. We must be able to compete with the other cities and towns around us if we want to move forward to where we all want to get to. And us being third highest in the 22 cities and towns that receive water and sewer services from the MWRA is not acceptable. But we also can't turn an eye to it either. We must attack the problem, and so that's what I've suggested to do. And I think now with some of these adjustments, this is more, I think, in line with what, we're all hoping on how we attack the problem. The other thing I would say is that based on, some of these changes that we're suggesting to you tonight, the average single-family home who uses 800 cubic feet of water will see a $5 increase per month. So over 12 months, that would be, a $60 a year increase. The other thing I would let you know when you look at these numbers is that the resources that we're suggesting be dedicated to this problem, when it's all said and done, when you add the administration and the labor from where we are in the current fiscal year to where we're proposing to be in fiscal year 13, it's roughly a $35,000 a year difference. So I think, this accomplishes a lot of what we all want to accomplish. And, it would have been easy for me to be able to do this in July and August when our residents are away, when the city council's in recess. But I just don't think that's the way to address the problem. We need to, get at this head on. We need to work together on trying to come up with ways to, be better at leak detection, to be better at when a water leak is detected, that we fix it right away. We don't let it sit for 10, 20, 30 days. And I think if we, go with the proposal that I've outlined before you tonight, I think this will get us down the road where we want to go. So tonight, I'm joined by a few folks. I first want to say how proud I am to have not one, not two, but our entire panel of Public Works Commissioners here tonight. We have Dick Purcell off to my left. He is the chairperson of the commission. Our newest member, Erica Lutz, Ward 1 resident, and then we also have Bill Coleman, who joined at the same time out of Ward 4. Also, we have here tonight Jeffrey Manship, who I am proposing to lead this new idea forward. And then also we have Doug Gardner, who's from Municipal Consultants, who's been helping the city along for many years with respect to water and sewer rates. So, Madam President, if there aren't any questions at this point, what I'd like to do is have Mr. Gardner say a few brief words to the council, and then we could follow your lead from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have some lights on, so I do want to be respectful of the council members here. So I'm going to go to my farthest left. I can't tell which one went on first. Councilor Kinnon.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm a little confused. Am I to understand that the budget that's been presented has changed then?
Not on the expense side. The expense side, that's pretty much the same. It's on the rate side. What was built into the rates back on May 29th included the idea of us going out to bond to address those streets I spoke of, and then also this reserve.
So the increase is actually 8.1% still on the expense side?
Correct.
One other question, and that has to do with, we received this City of Malden management letter.
Sure.
I'm sure you've been through it. And on page 16 of that letter, it references that from 1994 to just recently, the city was moving money out of the water enterprise, which was interest before your time, over to the city side, but that has to be repaid. So is there a way to take that money, in fact, I know it has to happen, but take that money and reduce this rate increase even further?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We've just started to talk about the results contained within the report. I can assure you that I will have every department head or anybody that's been mentioned in the report in to see me to be held accountable on what's been raised in the report. But just today, we started talking about the issue you identified on page 16.
Well, it would appear,
right,
if their report is right, and these are certified public accountants, that this money should be sent back over there because the ratepayers paid too much and should get that money back.
Yeah, and again,
That would be the only thing to do.
Yeah.
That would be equitable, I would think.
Yeah, again, until I have the personnel around to go over those issues in depth, I'm not prepared tonight to tell you either way, what the direction is the administration would take with that, that issue.
It just would be a way to lower their rates down below,
Right. I'm certainly
probably in the 5% range, so thank you.
I'm certainly open to that, Counselor, but I just haven't had the opportunity to sit with the appropriate staff.
Thank you, Councilor Kinnon. Councilor, is it, no, I'm sorry. Councilor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Quick question regarding the percentages you used. One from the MWRA sheet that they've provided indicates 7.6, and I believe you indicated 8.1. Could you give us a dollar amount that corresponds?
Well, as I mentioned, the 7.6% increase is fixed. That's an assessment from the MWRA using, I think a 3-year average from the previous fiscal years. The 8.1% is the changes that I've proposed on the expense side. So it's a difference of, 0.5%. So 7.6% to 8.1%. I don't have, you're talking the dollar value of that?
The dollar value.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. I could ask the controller.
Maybe if we could get that would be helpful.
Yeah.
The difference in the FY12 budget to the FY13 budget?
I'll tell you what I'll do, Counselor. I'll get that offline and send
Great.
that back up to the
Great,
podium.
thank you. And then I guess one other thing is a policy consideration that I'd ask my colleagues to consider, and I know you're going to make a presentation, I appreciate that. So, but one thing would be, I guess, the assertion that, you know, we have to accept the 7.6. Surely we have to pay that bill due to the MWRA, that assessment. I'm certainly not saying we don't.
Sure.
However, there is nothing that says we could not supplement that in some way to potentially give the ratepayers another break. So just that piece I'd ask you to consider, because I view this similar to the PAYT argument in that, you know, if we choose to augment to a certain amount the expenditure, then we could do that. Certainly, we have to pay the bill either way, so however much we want to kick in, I guess I would just ask everybody to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah, there's no
Councilor
question, Madam President. You could hit the expense side further, but we'll just be chasing our tail for the next 5, 10, 20 years. You know, the rates are going to go up higher than the other cities and towns contained within the MWRA district. You know, my thinking is we need to really get this under control to where these other cities and towns are, which is 4 or 5%, 3, 4, 5%. So that's the idea behind it. And to be able to do that, just a few, less than 1% over what the MWRA has assessed us, I think is, a pretty good start.
And just for following a quick question, and I don't mean to take it out of context of procedure from my seat, but one of the steps to address that is chasing down that $1 million
No doubt.
value. Because I think one of the hopes that I had, and we all have tonight, is that this is being live to the local residents. It's also to educate our local residents on what it means. We've been bantering 8% up to 19%. We've talked about it publicly. And I think it's really the hope tonight, we get more understanding of it, some of the folks who are new and some of us that have been sitting here. However, I do want to make sure that we touch on the general principles of what that rate change means. And I think
Yeah, and I think what, Madam President, you'll see what our administration does moving forward too, is start getting this information out to all of our residents. So what I'm envisioning in the months ahead is on our website and through other means of communication is actually, educating people, on how much cubic feet's being used, how are we doing on a month-to-month basis, because this has sort of been an issue, and I was a council for 8 years. We put so much time into the operating budget that this was always sort of an afterthought, but it can't be anymore, and that's why I think you're really seeing us give it the attention that I think it deserves. Back to Councilor D'Angelo's point, with the 8.1% increase, what that also contains is 2 water crews. Before, we've always had 1 water crew. So if there was a water leak in the city of Malden, and there always was because we have an aging infrastructure, and that crew was sent to the leak, they were focusing on that leak. If there were another couple leaks going on around the city, we had no means to address it. We either had to call in a contractor or we would just let it sit. So, that's why you're seeing me retool and reposition, how this unit works. And the first thing is by collapsing everybody under one roof. Again, the water meters used to be Rita's upstairs. Someone was in the treasurer's office collecting. Going to try and get them under one roof and make sure that, we're sort of all, in this together. That's the idea behind it.
Okay, thank you. And to get back on track, Councilor Altrino is next.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Mayor, thank you for coming down. Okay, I'm understanding the percentage increase, but I'm going to speak selfishly on behalf of Ward 2.
Sure.
We're very fortunate that we have about 7 or 8 streets either being fixed, have been fixed, or have pipes being replaced over the next few months. I was talking to Mr. Russell the other day. My major concern is the patchwork that's been done is just not acceptable, as you just alluded to. So I know you made an introduction, but what can I take back to my residents on a plan to properly pave these 7 or 8 streets? Because they're not happy, as you would imagine, and I really don't have an answer to them And I'm asking you, and I asked many of them to watch tonight, because you would be on and good information would be coming from you. So what could I selfishly, as the Ward 2 council, say to my constituents?
Well, under this new scheme tonight, what you can tell them is we won't be doing it, through the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. What we will be doing is proposing to the City Council in the early fall a capital improvement program that will contain the funding necessary to repair the roads the way they should be repaired. And I will be suggesting to the council that, again, we just don't look at the road, but we look at what's on the left and what's on the right. That is going to cost money. The only difference being between the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund and the operating budget is that, it'll be a budgeted item over 20 years, as opposed to here would be on the rates. So you can take that to the bank, that I will be suggesting that to the City Council in the fall. And, obviously we'll have to see, what the appetite of the City Council is. But I'm in agreement with you and Mariano that we can't leave the roads the way they are now. And I think all of us, way back when, no fault of anyone's, that, we thought that, when they were coming in and doing the water main work, which I don't regret whatsoever, that, the road would have been addressed a little bit differently. But, you live and learn, and to me, I don't think we should leave the roads the way they are.
And thinking out loud, Mr. Mayor, if you're introducing this in the fall, by the time bids go out and if the bond is approved, et cetera, we'll be going through the winter.
That's right.
Plowing, patched, and you have members of the DPW who know that some of these patches just either might break up or something, so the streets would be quite difficult for snow removal, but you're looking at a year then.
Yeah, I'm not going to stand up here and tease you. You're right. This would be next spring/summer.
Okay.
Under this sort of new way of thinking. If we were able to do this through the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund and was approved, we could go out July 2nd and do RFPs to attack this in the summer and fall. But I understand the council's concern. I too agree, that, if we have to pick one, probably should be a capital improvement program. And so that's the thought process tonight.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. May. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Altrino. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Mayor, let me just make sure that I'm clear on the changes. When we did on the changes for the resurfacing of the roadways following the water pipe replacement, last year when we went through, I guess we'll call that phase one, what we were telling the residents then was that once we did the water pipe replacement, we would do a temporary patch that needed to set up for a whole year, so that it would, because if we had paved over it before that, we'd end up having a sunken roadway. And so those folks who got their streets done last year were told that this is the time of year that we would be resurfacing. Right. So what you're saying to us tonight is that that plan is out.
I did this, and let me just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And that the new plan is that we will go out for money to do that work and the other restoration through the capital improvement program, which would mean that we would probably be putting off the actual repairs for another year.
Yep. And let me say I join with you, because I, ran around the city saying the same thing as you did. But now when you assume office and you really get into the issues, this is one that, I think we all did, sort of missed that way back when we adopted the SRF program funding. However, I would just, change that slightly. Of the, I forget how many streets we did in phase one. How many was it, Bill? It was roughly 30. Yeah, about
roughly 30, yep.
30 streets. Okay.
That's right. Each of the 8 wards got about 4 streets or so.
So let's call it 30 for phase
All right.
one. We were able to accomplish the restoration, some of the sidewalk repairs, some of the curbing, streetscape stuff within that funding. And the reason being is because when the bids came in for phase one, they were much lower than what we had anticipated they would be. So we took those savings, those additional funds, and we attacked some of those streets that didn't have the length of a West Street, for instance. And we were able to do that all within the Phase 1 funding. But there were a series of streets, because of the length, because of the size, that we did not have the funding left over to attack those streets. Those are the ones that I'll be coming down to see you in the fall about.
Yes,
I don't have the list in front of me, but there are some that will be restored to the way we all want the streets to be restored, but there are just as many that won't be, and those are the ones I'll be coming down.
Yes, my recollection of that whole process was the original number of streets that each of us in the wards were going to have was able to be expanded because the bids came in at a lower price. And so instead of getting, in the case of Ward 7, I think we did 4 streets originally, and because the bids came in, we were able to pick up, you know, a 5th or a 6th street. And so, but for the residents, the residents that's sitting at home, having heard last year that we would be resurfacing curb to curb a year after the work was done. What's being asked now is be patient. It is still our plan to resurface those roadways and redo the sidewalks and other landscape around that, but it's liable to be pushed back until funding from the capital improvement program is put in place and agreed.
Correct.
That's my understanding. Okay. With regards to the unaccounted for water that you mentioned, and the reorganization of that department, what are some of the things, and maybe that'll be coming from Mr. Manship or other, but what are the things that we're going to be doing differently now that will help us to detect this unaccounted for water, which is certainly a massive amount of money, massive amount of water that's leaking that cost us all? What are the things that are going to be done to differently now to detect that shortage of water?
Well, just some of the things. We'll be doing more frequent detections, you know, which now are sparingly done. We'll be asking to upgrade our equipment that's used to, you know, detect whether or not there are leaks within our lines across the city.
So, excuse me, so we have, like electronic detection equipment that can discover, I know, it seems to me that what we've been doing in the past is once something breaks, we fix it.
Precisely, yep.
And that's certainly that's not a good way for us to be doing it.
Well, not if we want to compete against, you know, Medford, Melrose, Stoneham, Wakefield, these other cities and towns, you're right. You know, we have to be more proactive, just not on the repairs, but also, I think, you know, something you've been advocating for is educating the residents as to exactly, you know, what this all means to us. And so those are some of the things that we'll look to do. And you can already see the effect by us attacking. You know, there was an issue about whether or not there was water leaving Malden and heading toward Melrose on Broadway. And so I took the action because I wasn't going to wait, you know, for legal action and all that stuff, you know, to install a meter reader, a gate to start counting, you know, how much water is leaving the city. And, you know, based on the latest statistics, you know, some of that unaccounted water is going up, you know, that way. So once I have a, you know, pretty good idea and consistency about the cubic feet that are leaving Broadway and heading toward Melrose, we'll be, you know, making a phone call to them to work out an agreement. And then if agreement doesn't work, then obviously we'll have to take other means of action. But, you know, that's the approach that I think I want us taking moving forward, is not just us talking about this next June, but us talking about this every month. So we're all in tune as to, you know, what exactly is going on here in this account.
So for the residents to know, this unaccounted water comes in many forms. Obviously, whenever there's a fire, whenever the hydrants are opened, whenever that water is used to fight a fire, or in the case of the recent water replacement, as we've had to tap into the fire hydrants to temporarily feed water to each of the residents in these affected areas, that's really unaccounted for water.
But that's a small, I think what you'll hear tonight, that's a small portion of the unaccounted
Exactly.
water. Yeah.
So the larger portions are the leaks. There was somewhere underground where we've got a leak that water just keeps on flowing. all of us residents know that if we have a toilet that is running constantly, how much that is affecting
Right.
our monthly rate. So, you know, you multiply that many fold by a broken pipe somewhere that we don't know, and that's really what we need to get to stop all this heavy, unaccounted for water use. The third thing I would just ask for clarification on, you mentioned that in terms of the rate increases, that we were the third highest out of 22. So you're saying that of the 22 communities that are served by the MWRA district, we are third at the top or third from the bottom?
Third at the top.
So
You know, we have one of the highest increases.
We got one of the
highest assessments.
highest increases.
Right.
Now, what accounts for that? How is it that we are at the top end?
Well, and I think that's what Mr. Gardner will, you know, present to you, the formula that the MWRA uses to calculate consumption in the rate increase, in the rates themselves. He'll explain it. It's a formula. It's a 3-year average divided by, you know, he'll have all that information for you. But the bottom line is, you know, the Massachusetts Water Resources, who I had in my office not too long ago, they too were surprised, you know, comparing to the other cities and towns as to why our increase was the third highest out of the 22 cities and towns in the district. So, again, it's not the way I drew it up. If you asked me back in December, January, whether I thought 6 months from now, you know, the highlight, the issue I'd be really keying in on is water and sewer, I'd say no. But it is what it is. We have a problem, and, you know, I look forward to working with you to try and address it.
Yeah. Well, as a former employee of the Mass Water Resource Authority, I mean, I do know that all of us ratepayers are hit heavily as a result of the federal judgment that was made against the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Just for a little history lesson, you know, when the Clean Water Act, I guess, was enacted, the state of Massachusetts challenged that. They fought the federal government in not wanting to clean the Boston Harbor. That was the issue. And when in federal court the state of Massachusetts lost that case, and we're forced now to build the treatment plant there at Deer Island and the other locations, at that point all the federal money that had been earlier available to cities and towns or states to build the plant was no longer available. So the cost of the high cost of this increase in water and sewer is because each of us ratepayers throughout the MWRA district is paying for the construction of the Deer Island treatment plant, a very sophisticated plant that had no federal money, very little federal money to come and support that, because the state challenged the federal government on that. And by the time the court, you know, it stretched out over years, by the time the Massachusetts lost the case, all the federal money, all the federal subsidy was gone. So that was one that we went to court with and lost, and it cost us dearly. And so all of us ratepayers are now suffering that decision. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and be that as it may, he is correct, but I mean, still, you look at some of these increases, Boston is only going, you know, their assessment went up 4.2%. You have Medford, 4.5%. Melrose is at 3.2%. So you can see we're at a competitive disadvantage right now. And, you know, I want to work with you to try and get us back down to where some of these other cities and towns are at.
So I'll be interested in hearing the explanation as to how they've established these different rates. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Councilor Kinnon?
I'll wait for we're going to have someone else up, right?
Correct. All right.
All right, thank you.
And my apology, Councilor Matheson.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Mayor.
Thank you for having me.
So 3 years ago, we had the Water Commission in here, and I went on a little fact-finding, asked a lot of questions, and determined that we had 100 miles of 100-year-old pipe. And I understand that these mains cost about $1 million a mile to repair, so that's a huge, massive project. And you might not know, I might be directing this to the wrong person.
Okay.
We've been ambitiously changing out these pipes. do we know how many miles we have remaining today? Because I think this is a big source of where the lost water is coming from.
Yeah, good point. I don't, what we could do is get that information for you,
Right,
Counselor?
so I'll save my question.
Okay.
Right. I don't want to trick you or anything like
Sure,
that.
understood.
That was my hard question. Here's my easy one. You said 800 cubic feet of water, that bill goes up $5. Is
Yes.
that correct? Is that the minimum bill?
Well, that's an average. That's looking at an average single-family home who's using 800 cubic feet.
No, I understand, and I live in a single-family home, and I think 800 cubic feet, you get the minimum bill. I could be wrong, but that's right. So this is my concern.
Sure.
That applies to everyone across the board, and it's a pretty regressive tax. And I hate tax. I mean, I'm in that group. I like to keep taxes as low as possible. But there's folks that are senior citizens, or in fixed incomes, or, you know, I'm not trying to tug at heartstrings here, but we've got disabled people and struggling families. And if they're paying their minimum water bill and it's going up $5, that's not, we're talking about a 50% increase, not an 8.1 or a 7.6. That's a 50% increase in their bill. I think some people are going to feel this in a dear way. And I remember, you know, in '09, you know, when we sat over there together, you know, we went from quarterly billing to monthly billing, and those folks, you know, I think they felt the pinch when that happened. There was a little bit of pushback from people. But back then, the minimum bill was $8. So that came to $96 a year for that household. Then I recall, you know, a year or two later, it went up to $10 minimum bill. That's $120 a year for a household. Now the minimum bill would be $15, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Still
Still 10.
Still 10?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I wanted to drive at. Okay. Well, thanks for letting me flesh that out with you. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Council Matheson, the thing we toyed around with too, but we just couldn't get any resolution on, was maybe changing the structure of our rates. As you know, we're at a 3-step rate. We toyed around with going to a 5-step rate. We looked at going to a flat rate, but we just couldn't come up with any consensus on doing so. So I'm hoping with a full fiscal year under, you know, my belt, that, you know, maybe we can come down with a different way of calculating, you know, the water and sewer rates. But we did make the attempt, and we actually had residents submit ideas on, you know, how we could change the structure. But, you know, the one thing we should always remember is when we change the structure, someone will be impacted. It's just a matter of, you know, how far you want to go with the impact, and we just couldn't pull it off in 6 months.
Right, thanks.
Thank you, Council Matheson. I see no other lights. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for having me, Madam
Certainly do
President,
want-
members of the
thank you.
council.
Do you want to invite other members up to continue our discussion related to this?
Hi, good evening. My name is Doug Gardner, and I'm the city's water and sewer rate consultant. Do you have the handout that was, that I
No.
produced for you?
No.
No. They don't have this handout. So, well, I emailed them up to your office and then.
Doug, well, in the interim,
Madam President, we'll run those and you
Right.
can continue talking.
yep.
Okay, do you have a clean copy? I've got notes all over mine.
So, Mr. Gardner, why don't we, while they're running those copies, why don't we get underway with a dialogue around what you're going to present to us tonight in terms of, talk to us about the formula, talk to us about the structure.
Sure. One of the counselors had a question on how the MWRA goes about calculating the water assessment. And I do have that answer for you. The way that the MWRA calculates each city's or town's, each member's assessment is based on their percentage of use against the MWRA as a total. And there are different factors involved. Some communities are both water and sewer, some communities are water only, some communities are sewer only, some are partial water, some are partial sewer, so it's a complex formula. But it's based on the community's percentage of use. And over the last number of years, the total water produced by the MWRA has actually been decreasing. when you have a decrease in consumption and you have increase in costs, that necessitates rating, additional assessments to the member communities. What's also impacting the city of Malden is that even though the MWRA's consumption is dropping, or their pumpage is dropping, Malden's consumption is actually increasing. And then to make factors worse in terms of rates is that the amount of water that's passing through the city's water meters in individual homes, that number is decreasing as well. So you've got three factors working against you, really four factors. Increased costs from the MWRA, a declining pumpage from the MWRA, meters that are not registering as much. So you've got all these factors working against you, and that all translates into a higher assessment. And that's why the city sewer assessment increased so much more than the other communities who are both water and sewer.
Okay, I have a...
Is that a simple, I tried to put it in layman's terms and just make it as easy as possible.
I do believe there is a question, Mr. Gardner. Councilor Spatafora.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want, it's more of a clarification. So you said by us reducing our water, the rate goes up, correct? From the MWRA?
From the MWRA, well...
Do they have a minimum rate? Do they have to, it's all in consumption, right?
It's based on consumption.
So because we're consuming less, they raise the rates?
Well, you have increasing costs that the MWRA has, debt, operating expenses, et cetera, and that they have less flow to spread that over.
Correct.
That reflects higher in terms of assessments.
So is it fair to say that the more efficient we become, the more money the sewer rates go up?
Not necessarily. A big portion of why your rates are high is because of the unaccounted for water.
Yep.
If we can tackle this unaccounted for water, get that number down to an industry norm. Right now you're at 31% unaccounted for water. Even if we could cut that in half, it's going to save a tremendous amount of money. And ultimately, you're going to see a lower assessment from the MWRA, or at least a smaller increase in the future.
Okay.
And the MWRA bases their assessment on a 3-year average. So even if we eliminated the unaccounted for water problem today, we wouldn't see the full benefit for another 2 or 3 years down the road.
Because, I mean, I would have to say that besides what the city's doing in the streets, I think probably the average consumer now, not only in the city of Malden, but most towns and cities are probably using less water
They are,
because
yes.
of all the equipment that we have in our homes now, whether it be, reduced toilets, energy efficient appliances now. I mean, it's become kind of a standard.
Yes, and people are
consuming
better
less water.
educated
Yep.
when it comes to water. And, it costs a tremendous amount of money to use water in the MWRA communities. So you tend to be more proactive, and maybe you don't leave the water running while you brush your teeth. So people have learned, and they become better educated over time to minimize their water consumption. But that, unfortunately, costs go up, regulations are increasing, everything costs more money. If you have a declining base, it results in higher rates.
That's all I had for now.
It's a
Madam Chair.
double-edged sword.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafora. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. You said your name was Doug
Doug, yes.
Gardner?
Gardner, yes.
How long have you been a consultant with us?
15 years or so.
Okay, I've been here 30. I've never seen this man before.
I've never addressed the council in all my years.
I've never seen this man before. And you've been with us for 15 years?
Yes, I have.
Who was it that you primarily worked with here in your role as a consultant?
In the past, Mayor Howard, the controller of accounts, Mr. Fermano.
Do the rest of you know Mr. Gardner? Okay.
I've met one or two of you over the years, and I met the mayor when he was a councilor.
Okay.
But I've attended, we've had public hearings every year, and I've attended those and presented at the public hearings.
Okay. That was my first question. I was leaning over to Councilor D'Angelo. Do you know who this man is?
Well,
Mr. Gardner, tell me this. So you said that, if I understood you right, that on average, the residential use of water is dropping,
Correct.
and that the amount of water that the city of Malden is being charged by the MWRA is increasing.
Has increased, yes.
Has increased. Has the amount, is that offset, is that increase offset by the amount of new residential construction that has been built?
Not in my opinion, no.
Not in your opinion. So then that would, then you'd conclude then that the increase has to be unaccounted for water. Leaks?
Yes, a large portion of it is, yes.
Large portion. So what percentage of our water that we're being charged from the MWRA is unaccounted for?
Well, of course, it's a difficult number to come up with exactly, but in the, according to the DEP report that the city files every year, the unaccounted for water is in the 30% range. So 30% of all water that you take from the MWRA is lost in some manner. Now, some of that, there's unaccounted for water, and then there's what I also call accounted for unaccounted for water. And unaccounted for water could mean a hydrant flushing program.
Yes.
Water that's, that the city consumes that is unbilled.
Yes.
So you can come up with some percentages, but your percentage is right around 30%.
But 30%, okay, so...
Yeah, and that's been a very consistent number over the years. It's fluctuated a few points.
So 30% equates to what kind of dollars?
At least $1 million per year. Well, 17 million is...
What is it, 17? 17 million total. So 10% would be 1.7 million. So much more than $1 million.
Well, the sewer assessment is not calculated in the same manner, so you would have to just look at the water assessment. And that is $6 million. So, you know, it could be as high as $1.5 million, it could be $1 million.
So you're saying the water is 6 million?
That's the assessment from the MWRA.
That's the assessment, and 30% of that is $900,000?
Yeah.
$1 million.
And again, of that 30%, some of that is accounted for and is used for firefighting,
And
flushing,
municipal buildings.
Municipal buildings. There's a whole list of.
But that certainly gives us a great delta in which to balance off increased detection and
Absolutely.
repairs to save that
Yes.
$1 million worth of wasted water.
Correct. A number of years ago, the city undertook a leak detection program for the first time in many, many years. Found a dozen leaks or so. They went out and repaired some of the major leaks. A week or two later, the city received an email from the MWRA stating that their water consumption on a daily basis had dropped, and they wanted to know what happened. So,
Yeah, so
that's how important this is. And
Yes.
if you want to get a handle on keeping your assessment as low as you can, we need to really hit this unaccounted for
Makes
water
sense.
problem head on. And but it's going to cost money. And we're going to
So
have
if it's going to cost money, but if we're wasting $1 million a year,
you've got to spend money sometimes to save money, and that's and I'm certainly not advocating that we throw good money after bad. If we go out there and we invest the money in the leak detection, in the equipment, in the personnel, and most importantly, the repairs, because it doesn't mean anything if we know where it's leaking if we don't go out and fix it. And every leak has to be fixed. If you find 100 leaks, if we only repair 3/4 of them, we're still losing money.
so who do I direct my questions to on the technical side? The earlier question that I had about what is the technology that we'll be using that will be able to increase our detection? Is that, am I directing that question to you or Mr. Manship?
You want to address that, Jeff? Okay. I'm going to yield to Mr. Manship.
Thank you.
And then when he's finished, I'll come back and answer any
That will
more
be fine.
questions you might have. Thank you.
Mr. Manship,
Good evening, Counselor.
you've heard my question.
Yes, I
Tell us
did.
what we're going to be doing.
Well, first of all, I want to introduce myself to the councilors that don't know me. I'm Jeffrey P. Manship. I'm the Director of Public Works at this present time. And I was asked by the mayor if I would consider being the director of a water utility department and give it my undivided 24/7 attention, and I think it took me less than a minute to say yes. For the reason is that our unaccountable water is consistently high, our consumption for the residents is high, and we need to be able to attend to our residents in regards to how they can conserve water and lower their water bills. To answer your question, Counselor, it's very simple. We have to be proactive in the leaks that are out there for unaccountable water, which, for example, if a gate box is leaking, you just lost 10,000 gallons in a day. I couldn't tell you how many gate boxes are leaking at the present time.
Oh, so, Jeff, let me stop you. Let me just cut right to the chase. We all understand that concept.
Right.
What are we going to be doing differently now to find those leaks?
Fixing
Are we
them on-
waiting for the water to be percolating up out of the gate boxes, or is
No.
it? Tell us.
Put together a leak detection program where instead of doing it once or twice in the course of the year, do a substantial leak detection program, then also go out with in-house people and continue to try to find leaks that you cannot see, but you can hear. You can hear the whiz on a gate box. You can hear it on a hydrant. Be proactive in being able to find these leaks before we have to wait for them to pop up through the asphalt. Okay, residents have leaks on their grass. You'll never hear them. You never see them until finally the grass is so saturated. Okay, they finally call and say they have a leak on their property, which is their responsibility, not the city. But it could run for months. Okay, that's an awful lot of water, unaccountable water. Also, unaccountable water is theft. Not to say anybody in the city of Malden is stealing water, but water meters can be jumped, can be removed from the system and put back before the reading is taken again. That is also a way to, we have to find if that is going on rampant in the city of Malden.
So
Again,
from what I
being
hear you
proactive.
saying, the technology that you're talking about is no rocket science. It's what we've been using right along. The ability to put a stethoscope on the
No,
gate
it's-
and listen to
it's-
hear the flow. I'm familiar. I think we're all pretty much familiar with that. That's the technology we're talking about.
But it's more advanced today, as you can have laptops in with it, okay? You can have line detectors with it today, okay, to pinpoint a little bit more accurate where your leaks are, so you don't want digging all over the place. It's just a constant repeat of leak detection to try to find these leaks before they get too far beyond. The other thing the mayor did mention is that, we're looking at 2 crews. We're looking at constant replacement of hydrants. Hydrants leak, gate boxes leak. A leak will come in the wintertime. You'll have 3 or 4 of them running at the same time. You have to be able to get them within a 24-hour period to remove that source of unaccountable water.
So would you tell us what the increase of personnel will be under the new plan versus what we are currently operating with now?
I believe in the budget it was me as the director, a supervisor coming on board, an existing foreman in water and sewer, a new foreman in water, utilizing the existing special MEO, craftsman, HMEO, and I believe there might have been 2 or 3 more hirees in there. And if stormwater is able to come over, then we'll be picking up stormwater too.
For a total of how many?
I believe 4, with the transfers of 2 people,
So 6.
yes.
And what is it currently? What is it currently that we're devoting to this activity?
I think there's 5.
So one additional person?
The vacancies that were vacant, the supervisor is no longer there. He retired. There's an HMEO that retired, a special MEO went to the fire department, that were all funded in the fiscal year 2012.
All right. So
We are-
there were positions that weren't filled.
That's
I
correct.
guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around hold on, let me finish. I'm trying to wrap my head around the question of how much more directed attention is going to be given under the new plan versus what it is currently. And if the numbers that you first gave me was 4 and 2 is 6, versus what's been operating now is 5, that doesn't sound like an awful lot of additional work toward the leak detection. And if the technology is simply that we're listening through a stethoscope, that doesn't sound like rocket science either. So how are we saving the $1 million, I guess is my question.
Okay.
Counselor, if you wouldn't mind
thank you,
my
Mayor.
indulgence. A couple of things that I think, Jeff might have left out that, should be noted once again.
Okay.
Is that under the old scheme, the water meter readers, they were reporting to engineering. You have the collector down in the treasurer's office. You have stormwater down in the DPW. You have the administrator up in engineering. So one thing I hope is not lost in all this is that they'll be all under one roof now. So before, I think what was happening is engineering, the water meter readers might be doing something, but, the folks on the water side might not exactly know when, where, why, and how. Hopefully, with everybody answering to one director, that will change over time. The equipment you spoke about, water meter readers themselves, we're still using the equipment that was bought back in, many years ago. I think when we started the system in 2005, the new water meter readers are Windows-based, and they'll be able to do, many more readings than our equipment today is capable of doing. On the personnel and labor side, we'll be able to get you, I've instructed our controller to get you an exact, breakout and org chart of what it looks like. But the thing that I would hope for tonight you'll look at is, the bottom line is when you take the additions, you take the deletions, it's roughly a $35,000 difference from where we are today versus where I'm suggesting we go in fiscal year 2013. Where I'm suggesting to go in fiscal year 2013, despite that slight difference, it's a completely retooled department. So again, my experience has been, I'm not sure the rest of the council, but I remember during those dire winters when there were leaks all over the city, and we just had one crew fixing them. And I think that is partly attributing to this unaccounted water idea. So hopefully with the additional crew now, plus the ability of us to still call in contractors, we'll be able to attack the unaccounted water, which to me is the main problem here in this water and sewer enterprise fund.
I guess I'm just not seeing
Yeah,
the
you will. Once
additional
we-
crew.
Yeah, once we get you the org chart, it should be pretty evident as to, what we're precisely proposing on what we do in fiscal year 13.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor Anderson. Counselor Kinnon.
Yes, actually. Excuse me, sir. What's your name again? I'm sorry.
My name is Doug Gardner.
Doug, we have met before a number
Okay.
of times. I used to be a DPW commissioner. I'm sorry I didn't remember your name. But how many cubic feet are coming in to the city every year? Do you have that number?
I do. The MWRA pumpage?
Yeah, what we're getting billed for.
Roughly 2 billion gallons,
2 billion gallons.
just under.
And we're going to get charged 24 million for that? Is that?
No, no, that's the amount of water flow. So the water flow is,
Is that what they
The
charge you on?
MWRA
They charge you on the water flow, right?
they do, but the
And they have a
sewer-
formula.
Right, but the sewer assessment is calculated much differently than water.
But is it not based on still the water?
It's based on population, it's based on
Okay.
a number of different factors. But the sewer increase from the MWRA this year was 5.5%. The water increase was 11.7%.
Yeah.
And that 11.7%, that's a direct, that increase is directly because of the increased pumpage, and that's a good portion of that is because of the unaccounted for water.
And we expect we can save how much? How many if it's, we can probably get down to what, 10%?
It's going to take some time, but that
Yeah.
would be a very acceptable number. There's always going to be some sort of unaccounted for water. It's impossible to have a 100% or a 0% unaccounted for water. But if we could get it down into the 10% range, that would be there would be a lot of savings there for the city. It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
But we need to get this thing moving in the right direction, and we're clearly moving in the wrong direction now.
Okay. All right, so under our current rate, I compute that would be if we could get to 10%, I know that's a long haul, but under our current rate, I think that would be about a 1.75 million savings per year.
Possibly on today's dollars.
Yeah.
I didn't run the math.
Okay.
I'll trust
All right.
your numbers.
And, okay, I'm all set, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Counselor Kinnon. Counselor D'Angelo. Oh, I'm sorry,
We had a double light going here.
we do.
We did. Thank you, Madam President. Actually, I have two questions. One actually is for the mayor, if you wouldn't mind me asking this. I'm kind of a head count person as I budget along with salary, and I know that we're talking about the $35,000 net increase to the salaries in the water enterprise or the water department. What I would be interested in, and if you don't have it tonight, that's fine, if you could provide it to us, I would appreciate it, is, what the increase in the head count is. Sure. And also, where you are pulling resources from other departments, is that a net decrease in those departments, or is there any, backfill that's being done in those departments to actually fully fund this new water department? Sure. So I really kind of would like to, make sure we balance that out, that if we are taking one person from a department to put it in water, that there's a net reduction in that department.
Sure, will do.
Okay, if we could do that, that would be great. Thank you very much. The other question, and I can't quite figure out Councilor Kinnon's calculator, or I'd be stealing it a little bit more. It's kind of an interesting little tool there. But we keep talking about this $1 million in unaccounted for water. And if we look at the water bill, the portion of the water bill that we got last year, it was about, I believe, $5.6 million. And we're talking about a 30% leakage. And for some reason, in my mind, $1 million as a part of 5.6 million doesn't really come out to 30%, so I was a little bit.
Yeah, but it's the water and sewer, so that's 17.
Okay, so the $1 million is a combination of, as Councilor Kinnon was just saying, $1 million lost water that also has a sewer charge associated with it. Is that correct? So we're paying, kind of getting a double hit on that?
There would be some hit on the wastewater, yes.
Okay.
I don't know how much. I can find that out for you.
Yeah, I'd just be, so are you saying that there's not a one for, I mean, I know that obviously there's a different rating formula, but for every gallon of water that comes into the city, is there an associated sewer charge attached to it?
It's based on population, it's based on a number of different factors. I can get the exact formula for you from the MWRA. It's very complicated, but that will give you a better idea of how your assessment is calculated.
I like complicated. I'd
Okay.
love a copy of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Spatafora?
Thank you, Madam President. And first, I just have, this is more, I think, for the listeners, and I know the administration, I'm sure the councils feel the same way, but, I mean, I think a message has to be sent, and I'm sure it's done all the time, not only to the State House and our body up there, but also the MWRA, where these numbers, regardless if it's 10% or 6% or 7%, are just unsustainable going forward. I understand we have a problem internally with our lost water or missing water, whatever you want to, however you want to term it. But these numbers, they're out of whack with not only the economy but most people's own personal budgets. And this is a statement because at one point, either the city's going to dip into this and help modify these in the next 10, 15 years, or there's going to be a revolt because, I mean, when you start putting things up 10 or 15% or 8%, those numbers don't make sense to most people.
No. And your assessment is not going to go down in the future.
Yeah.
And it's going to go up,
Considerably.
Considerably. So this is not going to get any better in terms of the assessment to the member communities. And the best way we can keep the assessment as low as possible is to minimize the waste. And I keep reverting back to this underlying theme, but it is the underlying theme that unaccounted for water costs the city a tremendous amount of money, and we need to get a handle on it, and we need to be proactive with it.
So that's the second question, and there's probably going to be a couple of ways I want you to kind of help me explain. It's more of a learning curve. With 30%, and you said it's been pretty stable, or that number's been the same for the last couple of years.
It's gone down a little bit over the years, but it hasn't been under 30 in quite some time.
So I'm assuming you're going to say, with all this work we've been doing for the last couple of years, and as we continue to go forward with the infrastructure replacement, it's going to make a difference.
Yes.
But my question is there a way, and I think Councilor Anderson tried to ask, with all the technology we have, is there a way that we can pinpoint areas of the city where these leaks are? Or, because I just can't get my head around 30% of something coming into the city we can't find. And if the holes or the leaks are so minuscule, we're probably never going to be able to find them unless we dig up the street and replace that pipe, which we're doing. And the second thing is, if they're so large or medium-sized, wouldn't we notice them in certain areas? And third, is there a way that is there a technology besides literally digging up the ground that we could use? And I know the mayor said we're going to start doing more of these where they drive around, I know they listen for the water.
Yes.
But and I don't know anything about this, when you look at a map, say, of the city of Malden, can you take, I'm assuming there's certain meters in certain parts of the city.
Correct.
Are you able to tell, okay, we know there's there's missing water, it might not be a leak, there's missing water between, Route 60 and Method Street in Malden, so we got to identify that. Because in order to find 30%, in my opinion, I think it's like finding 1,000 needles in a haystack.
Yeah. Well, there are a number of different areas that we need to look at. Malden's an old city. The maps are older. We need to address, are there connections, open connections, to surrounding communities, similar to the one we found in Melrose recently. Since they put the meter on that connection going over to Melrose, 175,000 cubic feet of water has passed through that meter in a little over a month.
And that was never paid for previously?
Still not being paid for. Recently identified, and the mayor's being proactive on how to address that. But the first step is to put a meter on there to determine how much water are we losing. So that 175,000 cubic feet that's gone through that meter in the last month or so, that's going to eat into your unaccounted for water number. So you'll see that number maybe, I don't expect that 175,000 to be consistent every month because there are some seasonal businesses hooked up to that line. Mm-hmm. But that could account for 4 or 5% of the unaccounted for water. And suddenly that's water that's essentially being wasted that will be paid for.
Do you think there's more situations like that where you can find larger pockets? Just estimate.
Possibly. I know that's not an answer, but possibly. And, you know, a lot of this is trial and error when you go in through a leak detection process. You have to look, look where you might have connections. Roads that once existed on one map that are now changed over the years. Maybe there's a water line that runs out there and is just feeding another community. Or there's a pipe that just goes into a wetlands area, and you wouldn't even notice that the water is flowing into that area. So these are all areas that need to be explored to try and identify the unaccounted for situation. But we also need to look at the leaks that are currently existing within your 100-plus-year-old infrastructure. And once we identify the leaks, we have to fix them.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Council Spatafor. Councilor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Gardner, a couple different things I'd like to raise, a couple of different issues I was hoping you could provide the council edification on, and the people at home, too, because this is really a big issue. People are looking at their bills. For some people, it's going to jump a couple $100s a year. You know, we're losing 1 million gallons of water a year somewhere, and there's all these issues. So a couple things. I was wondering if you could give the council some insight. I did have a substantial conversation with the MWRA today, and I was able to call upon my time that I spent in the legislature as an aide and to go over some of the things. It's a very complicated algorithm. Don't go into every nitty-gritty detail. But could you tell us about the formula? Because to me, the formula that the MWRA has, both on the supply side and on the sewer side, it seems to reward communities that are efficient and penalize communities that are not efficient. Would that be appropriate?
Yes.
Okay. So to me, with, what do we have? Anywhere between 110 or 130 miles of pipe, depending upon how you calculate, even if you call it 120. I would ask my colleagues to consider, if we replace 1.5 miles of pipe a year, we're never going to catch up in that 100 years. So I think there's been certain years in the past, and I've spoken with the city engineer on this, that we've only done a couple of miles, and we're not making headway doing it that way. And then you hear about these construction jobs that are going on where they're pulling out wooden pipes, you know, and these other pipes are, you know, 70, 80 years old, sometimes even more. So to me, to do this catch-up is really important. So could you take us back, if you've been with us for 15 years, the mentality from the past year, 5 years, 10 years, and how we ended up in this spot? Because from where I'm sitting and from where the ratepayers are sitting, we can't keep doing this. This is just not sustainable. We can't keep going, to one of the council's points, we can't keep going up close to double-digit increases on any type of regular basis. So again, that was a complicated thing, but if you could just break it down, you know, tell us the basis of the formula and how we can be rewarded by it, and then go into the mindset of, you know, how we ended up here, if you could. Thank you.
Okay. Again, the water assessment is calculated based on percentage of float against the rest of the MWRA system. And then
and let me just stop you there. Now that's really important.
That's paramount, because I'm sorry for interrupting, but
no, please, because that's the whole thing. This isn't 351 cities and towns.
Right. Okay. We have let's look at it as a pie graph, and you know, we have a circle that's the entire MWRA community, and in the past, Malden has taken up a very small slice of that pie. Now, that pie is actually shrinking, but Malden's piece of that pie is actually expanding. And so what does that yield? Higher assessments. In a nutshell, that's probably the simplest way to think of it. Now, the sewer formula is a little more complicated, and you know, quite honestly, I don't understand the whole formula, but it's based on population and debt and a number of other factors. But I'd be happy to send an email to Leo Norton, who is the rates manager over at MWRA, and you know, I talk to him every year. And when Malden's assessment came in at 11.7% increase, I sent an email to him immediately asking why it was so high, and he got right back to me and explained it. And basically, as I just described to you, that the MWRA pie is shrinking, Malden's slice of that pie is increasing, higher equals higher assessments. Now, over the years, you know, how the rates have worked is we look at the budget, we factor in capital improvements, changes in debt service, changes in personnel, and then we look at consumption. And that's what drives rates, budgets and consumption. So it's been a very, you know, we tried to keep rates steady, and in some years there were large increases, in other years there were no increases, and then years there were 3 or 4 years without any increases, and then there would be a major increase. And that was really pretty common back in, you know, 10, 15 years ago. Raise the rates once every 3, 4 years, and then raise them again after that, known as a 3-year average increase. But as costs have increased so much, primarily through the MWRA assessment, going 3 years between rate increases has really been detrimental to the financial health of the community, because you have to raise rates so high, and the percentages that the MWRA assesses you could be anywhere from a 2% increase to a 10 or 15% increase. So you really needed a pretty good crystal ball to figure out where that assessment was going to be. So over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've advocated yearly increases, and I would rather see smaller increases each year rather than a big increase, wait a couple years, another big increase. Right. Because you'd be, instead of looking at a 10% increase, you'd be looking at a 30 or 40% increase, which we've had in the past. So, it gives me no pleasure to raise people's rates. And, people view me as the Grim Reaper when I come into these public hearings. But, the numbers are what they are. And the way I can best serve you is to help you become more efficient and figure out ways to lower your assessment.
Well, I think that's a very important piece here, and I think with, we have CDM Smith, Bob Button, we have Jack Russell, we have a new department, we have a mayor and administration committed to making inroads. The council has a significant new flavor to it. So to me, I would propose that if we could get all of these gentlemen together on a regular basis, whether it be quarterly, twice a year, certainly at the minimum yearly, but to make a presentation on how to put us on a path to whether we have to do 6 miles a year, 8 miles a year, however many miles of pipe we have to replace a year to do that, because we're literally, pardon the pun, we're just flushing this money down the drain, $1 million. Yes. And we're going to argue when the budget comes up over tens of thousands of dollars over personnel positions, when we have $1 million just flowing out in pipes that we're never even having the benefit of using. So, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor D'Angelo.
Okay. I'm going to yield to the mayor, please.
Just on that point, Madam President, what our intent is to stop meeting monthly, which we already are internally. But I think what I'd ask from you, Madam President, is to give us a counselor or two to start attending those meetings with me and us, to start really getting on the same page with respect to consumption rates. Where is this thing going? I too agree. I don't want to show up next June and be in the same position of saying, rates have to go up 10% without being able to quantify why. And so, I'd ask as soon as the fiscal year begins, that you give me, a person or two that could start attending these meetings with me.
I think it's an absolutely great idea to make sure that all the stakeholders are at the table. Councilor Lucy for the first time tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple of questions, but maybe, Mr. Gardner, I'll start with you. When you say that the rates go up, you like to keep them, at a steady pace instead of one big jump. Have we kept them artificially low over the years, and then you see a big jump?
Not in the last few years. The rates have been pretty much based on increases as the budget dictates.
Do you remember what the rate increase was last year? Was there an increase last year?
I want to say it was around 9%.
9% last year?
9%, if memory serves. I can go back, and I have my notes with me. I can go back and get the exact number, and I believe you've received a copy of that report last year.
Okay, yeah, I just don't remember what the figure was. Okay, and you also said the sewer rate's based on population?
It's based on a number of different factors, but population is one of them.
And was that always like that way? Because I remember at one time, I think, when they first got in the MWRA system, the sewer rate was 2/3 of whatever you paid for water, and then eventually it just
No,
kept...
I don't believe it works that way any longer.
No, I know. So over the time, they've changed that with some
Yes.
type of different formula?
It's a complicated formula.
Yeah, they keep on saying that.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see it myself.
Okay.
Let's just see if I can figure it out. Okay, thanks. And Jack Russell, if I could just ask you maybe, there's a lot of talk tonight that when these leaks that we don't see, and over the last few years, we have been digging up roads, we have been taking up these old pipes. Is your experience, Ben, when you dig up these streets, put the new pipes in, can you see leaks or what might have been leaks? The old pipes, when just, if you just come up for 1 second. We've just been talking all night about these hidden leaks costing the city. So as the city's been digging up the streets and replacing these old pipes, when you get in underneath the surface, do you see, maybe some pipes that have been leaking?
I mean, sometimes you do. I mean, we're replacing pipe that's well over 100 and something years old. And we're not only replacing the pipe, we're replacing the old lead water services as well. I sit here and I gotta bite my tongue because I've been involved with this now for over 12 years. I don't think anyone here knows it as well as I do and is concerned with the unaccounted for. But, in a nutshell, if you think of how much unaccounted for we have, 30% is a little high. It's actually between 25 and 30. But even that, we get between 5 and 6 million gallons of water a day. So to think that that's leaking in the street, you'd have rivers flowing down your street. I mean, we have a city population of 60,000 people. So if we're losing a third of that, that means we're losing enough to service a town of 18,000 people.
And I think if you put it in perspective and you think about that percentage and you look at what we're getting billed for, it's an amazing statistic.
It is.
And I think if you throw that out there, I mean, people out there, if they're watching that, they're probably shaking their head. They'll say, how can this be? So, it's obvious we have, move in the right direction to, try to start heading this off at the pass and working it down. But I was just curious, because I know we've been digging up a lot of streets. I don't know if you see anything once you open up the...
Well, I am noticing, right now we don't have very many leaks on the book. We keep track of leaks, so it certainly is helping. I mean, we're under a DEP consent order to get rid of these lead lines, so that's a good thing. But these old lead lines leak as well. Again, we have to rely on the MWRA meters. They're the ones that feed us, and we have to hope that they're calibrated properly. But again, for us to be losing that much, we do leak detection every year. Some years we do it twice a year. We've attempted to do, we had a water audit done by an independent engineering firm 2 years ago. They didn't find anything. The MWRA has been out for the last 2 months looking. They can't find any leaks. So we are looking, and again, no one's more concerned about it than I am.
Okay, thank you. And just my one final question, if I could ask Jeff, no, you're good. Thanks, Jack. Jeff Manship, if I could just ask Jeff a quick question. And I know, Jeff, you were up here and, your goal was to find, get this unaccounted water accounted for, I guess. But as part of your plan, would it be, maybe on a more personal level? And, the DPW commissioners are here and they get all the people all the time saying, hey, my water bill's too high and this sort of thing. Would part of your goal be maybe to help people understand the leaks in their house, making it more personal, and there's just not the leaks in the ground in the city?
Yes, we have to be definitely proactive and very helpful to the residents in regards to understanding, first off, consumption of water in their own residency. A 1/4-inch leak in their own toilet creates 10,000 gallons of water a day that they pay for that they don't use. It just flushes down the toilet, no pun intended. But yes, we have to reach out to them in any means that we can. If it means with our leak detection program that we have that shows that somebody's leaking for 35 days, if we have to knock on their door and try to help them that way, lowering their consumption lowers their water bill. lowering the city's consumption helps out with our overall cost for our wholesale water and our sewer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucy. Okay, now, let me start going to my left. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President, for letting me speak once again. The more we speak, and the more speakers we have coming up here, it raises more questions almost than it does give us, in my mind, logical answers. I heard Mr. Russell just say that he's probably knows more about this, the water system than anyone here this evening. And it does blow my mind to think that 30% of our water is flowing unaccounted for, and why aren't we seeing rivers running down the street? So how sure are we of these numbers? You know, could it be the meters are giving us false readings? I know certainly our residents at home, when they get a spike in their bill, one of the first things, of course, they question before finding the leaks themselves is, why is this meter going up? But let me get away from that. I'll just make this point to the mayor and to others, that if truly we are wasting 30% of the $6 million that we're paying for water, if 30% is an accurate number, that's about $1.8 million. It would certainly seem to me that a great investment for us would be to add more boots on the ground to find these leaks. You know, it's nice to consolidate, you know, the different departments and get the meter readers and all those under one roof, but that doesn't help us with boots on the ground to detect the leaks and fix the leaks. I mean, if we were to just place 2 more people, you know, in the department at a cost of what, another $100,000, let's say, with all the benefits, to help us save $1.8 million, to chip away at that, I mean, that just seems like a no-brainer. Let's put the boots on the ground if we're sure that that's what the problem is. And I'm not sure that you all agree on that, because I hear, you know, Mr. Russell saying one thing and you saying another, and if you've been around for 15 years and he's been around for, Jack, I've been on this council long enough for 30 years. You've been around as long as I have, it seems like. This is an area that we need to get to, but we need to stop the leaks if that's where they're going, because our ratepayers can't afford to be paying for wasted water. Right. And I'm not convinced at all that your detection program that you're talking about, you know, enthuses me, because it sounds like, you know, one additional person and we're doing the same thing. We're listening to a water main to try to hear that there's water flowing through there. That doesn't sound like anything sophisticated enough when we've got an issue of $1.8 million that we're throwing away, or flowing away, maybe I should say.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson.
If I could answer just one point to that. The MWRA, they have master meters set up throughout the city, and I did request the calibration reports to ensure that they were accurate, and they do calibrate those meters on a regular basis. So I do believe that the gallonage that they provide to us is accurate. And I actually
how about the home meters? Are they accurate?
Well, the home meters are, you know, less than, you know, they're probably 7 or 8 years old right now, and at the time when you bought them, they were state of the art. And yes, I believe they're very accurate. Now, you're always going to have
So you continue to believe those home meters are accurate?
Yes. Water meters, if anything, they're going to run a little bit slow as they age, but for a residential meter, you know, 8 years is pretty new. They have a useful life of 12, 15 years in terms of accuracy. Now, in every system, you're going to have water meters that malfunction or don't transmit properly. But you have very up-to-date, state-of-the-art meters that actually produce a report to say, hey, this meter isn't producing a reading. It needs to be addressed. So that's part of this plan as well, that we have to address these meters that are not registering properly or not registering at all.
Well, I'm glad to hear that our residential use of water is dropping. That's what you said early on.
Yes.
The message to our residents at home is that none of us can afford to have wasted water going through our meters. So, you know, you need to be checking your toilets, making sure that we're not wasting water that way. We need to be looking at those garden hoses that you have sitting in your backyard. There could very well be an open garden hose that you don't see, that water is flowing through there, and it's costing you and us and everyone additional money, and all of those kind of things. The leaks that would come on the pipe that is owned by the resident that runs from the main into the meter, if there's a leak there, it may be the responsibility of the homeowner, but it's really the cost is borne by the city of Malden.
That is
because
correct.
it's not going through the meter. They're not being
Right.
charged for that
See,
leak.
You need to find a way to enforce that leak be repaired as soon as possible.
But if I'm to narrow down to one significant point is that if we're sure that we're wasting $1.8 million in water, then we need to be investing more money in the detection. And if that and it doesn't look like we're doing that if we're only adding one person to the boots on the ground to be able to find and proactively stop this unaccounted for water. Thank you.
Councilor, I also, I produce a report every month for the mayor and the DPW commissioners and the controller that looks at the city's billed consumption, their collections, the abatements, but also the MWRA pumpage. And I track that over a number of years. So if there are big spikes in consumption, I see them very early on. It's not like when I just do the rate study every spring. You know, I see on a monthly basis what's happening with the water consumption. So
you did mention that when there was a detection that took place, that immediately you were able to, earlier
yes,
on,
yeah, it was
that
a number,
you were
a number of years ago, the MW.
immediately able to see a reduction in the water flow, and the MWRA called questioning that.
Yeah, it was roughly 250,000 gallons a day, Jack, I believe it was. I got it from engineering, but yes, they, you know, they noticed it right away, and I would notice it every month as well.
How did we find the water situation going to Melrose? When did we find that, and how did we find that we were subsidizing Melrose with water flowing through our meter and going to their residents?
You know, well, we had suspected for the last few years that there was an open connection somewhere, and then I'm going to yield to. Okay, you know, I don't know all the details, Councilor.
Who does?
I believe Jack.
Can we have Mr. Russell come forward then? Let's hear from the subject matter expert. If Jack, you hear the question. When did we find out, and how did we find out?
It's probably been about 3 years now, and what it is again, we're always looking for this unaccounted for water. So,
Yes.
So the city has interconnections with the budding cities where our water line goes into their city, and there's just a gate between it. Years and years ago, when water wasn't so expensive, it was a common practice, so that if there was a problem on one side of the gate, you know, one city would let the other city use the water. Now that it's become so valuable, you know, you want to make sure all these gates are shut. So we went around. There's got to be 30 of them around, you know, because we abut Everett, Revere, Medford, Melrose. So, you know, we were looking, you know, the engineer upstairs, we were looking at this little finger of Melrose, which is just north of the former Smiley Buick building, which is now F.W. Webb. And we tried calling Melrose, but they didn't cooperate with us at all. But one of the local contractors that does a lot of work here was doing the Lowe's over. So when was that? A few years ago when the Lowe's up in Saugus was being done. So I asked the contractor, you know, when you were up there, was there a water line heading from Saugus towards Melrose? And he said no. And I said, can you confirm that with the Saugus people? So they did. So again, now we knew there was no line coming to this little finger of Melrose from the north, from Saugus. So we're thinking it has to be coming from Malden. So we go up, we shut the gate, and it's shut. You can, you know, a gate, it's like in your basement on your water, your copper, you know, you turn a valve. It's
Understand.
Same philosophy here. So we went up, we had the water crew shut it, and you can count the turns and you can tell whether it's shut. So I even sent the contractor up there to confirm. He said, Jack, it's closed. This contract has been around for years. So again, we kept trying to call Melrose. They weren't cooperating. So finally, we did a massive study. We had to shut side streets off of Broadway to isolate that gate, open and close it, and we went into Melrose and turned on a hydrant and found that we had that gate closed, but that hydrant was still working, yet if we shut a gate further down on Broadway, it shut off. So we determined by doing it that way that this gate, you know, the dividing gate was closed. I mean, was broken.
So we thought it was closed.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? We thought the gate was closed, but actually, while you may have turned the gate to take the action to close it, it was still flowing through.
Right. There's a plate inside the gate that shuts so the water doesn't get by. The plate was gone. So we had to replace that gate. So now this was last year. We did replace the gate. We kept trying to get Melrose to cooperate with us, which they weren't. So one
By
day,
cooperate, what do you mean?
we were trying to work out a mechanism. You know, show us what you have. You know, we'll figure out what you owe us. And
Oh, okay.
and finally, talking to former Mayor Howard, he said, let's just shut it. We've been playing around long enough, so we shut it. And there's a contract at DNR that's in Smiley Dodge now. They filed an injunction. We had to go to court. Kate Fallon went, and the judge told us, turn it on. He understood there's issues here to be resolved, but he said you cannot turn the water off to this business. So right now, through Mayor Christensen, we are monitoring this water on a daily basis. And again, we were under the
By
impression...
monitoring, you mean we've got a gauge on it to know how much water is flowing through?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor Christensen has, said we want to watch it on a daily basis just to see how much water is going through. And again, Melrose wasn't cooperating, and it's more than we thought. But it might bring the unaccounted for down 1%. So not significant. I mean, hey, any find is a good find, so I'm happy to see that. But.
And how many other potential locations do we have that feed water outside of Malden? I understand that there's an interconnection between cities in case they lose their water, that there's a redundancy, I guess you can call that.
Right.
But how many, other than that one, what's the potential of others going?
There's probably 20-something, but you got to keep in mind, Counselor, that if a gate is supposed to be shut and it's open, we could be drawing water from the abutting town. This scenario, this case here up in Melrose, there was only one way for the water to go. It was from us to them. These other locations that we have, we could be drawing from them. It depends on who the bigger user is on which side of the gate. But again, we've checked them all. As far as we know, they're all shut. All these other dividing gates are shut.
Well, again, just to repeat, if that's the area, if that's what we're concerned about, we need to have more boots in the ground to help us chip away at this $1.8 million potential loss of water. And I will speak for the last time. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. A very good last point. To my right, I think I'll do last call. Is it Councilor Spatafora? Okay. Counselor Matheson.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I heard that, you know, we're monitoring the water that's going into Melrose, and I believe I heard from Mr. Gardner it was 5%, and then Mr. Russell 1%? Did you say 5?
Which, for the leak going over to Melrose?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I want to try to be clear and not confuse you or anything like that, but I understand we've been monitoring the water loss to Melrose.
Yes.
And that's been going on for how long now?
A little over a month.
Okay, so
So-
if we extrapolated that by the full year, do we have a grip on how much water that is?
Well, it's been 175,000 cubic feet in that month. Multiply that by 7.48, 7.5. You know, it's over 1 million gallons of water in a month. Now, there are some seasonal businesses that we believe that line feeds, so I would expect in the winter months to see that consumption drop off. But I
But we're
believe it's
talking maybe 10 million gallons.
possibly more, possibly less. It's too soon to tell.
How many gallons is the unaccounted for water?
The unaccounted for water is,
By the full year, I mean, if you know.
yeah, I've got that in the computer. It's,
I just didn't know by the gallon, but that's okay.
I can get that, I can get the number for you. And it's an estimate. It's not obviously, it's not an exact number.
Right. So, I mean, if I was Melrose, I wouldn't be cooperating either. I'm getting free water. If I was more devious, I'd say let's start drawing from some other cities. But is there some way we can contest the assessment from the Resource Authority?
No.
There's no mechanism in place for that? They're getting raised, how many percent? 3%? We're getting raised 7.6 overall? 11.7 on the
Based
intake?
on, your percentage is going based on their formula.
Right, and their formula is in part based on our increased water usage, but some of our increased water usage is Melrose increased water usage. We can't contest that? They can do the wrong thing and we can't challenge them on it? Yeah,
You
this
could,
is
you
just
could
a
try.
fun-
I think you're
Do me
fighting
a
an
favor.
uphill
I don't
battle.
expect you to have all the answers. You know, in my profession, sometimes I don't have the answers. I gotta go hit the books. Look into that.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Matheson. To my far left, either Counselor Kinnon or Counselor Murphy, whoever chooses to take the mic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam President. I will be quick. Just a couple of questions. Just want a clarification, if I might. In the beginning, you had talked about, you know, the MWRA, one of the reasons the rates were going up was a decline in pumpage. And I'm just curious about the communities that participate in the MWRA resource area. Do communities ever leave that, or are those communities just using less water due to, let's say, better water management or, you know, new appliances that are coming online?
The MWRA is actually adding new customers. I don't believe anybody is leaving.
Okay, so
I mean,
it's...
Canton, I shouldn't say that. Canton has reduced their water consumption. They added some wells, and they're producing a lot more of their own water now, but they still use the MWRA for peak day demands, and I believe other communities as well. But the MWRA is actively looking for new customers to spread that cost over.
Well, and like the MBTA, the MWRA, I'm not a big assessment person because you don't have a lot of control over assessments. And I guess my question to you is, do you have any knowledge of the MWRA budget, overall budget from last year to this year, and whether it itself has increased or decreased, and what they're doing to manage their administrative costs?
I do not.
You do not? Okay.
I can, I'll put that on my list of questions to send over to them.
Okay. And what percentage of Massachusetts communities participate at the moment? I'm just thinking from a legislative standpoint is...
I've only got the communities that are both water, 100% water, 100% sewer, which Malden is. 2, 4, 6, 8.
Yeah. I was just looking at the
Looks like
number.
about 22 or 23.
Okay.
So you're part of that group of 22, 23, but there are others that are water only, others that are sewer only. And again, I've got that detail in my bag. I only provided
I'm just very curious as to, the MWRA budget and, what percentage increase it has gone up, especially from an administrative point of view and an expense point of view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Bob, could you come to the podium, please? I think I have a couple of questions for you, and I may have, and Jack, could you come to the podium as well, please? Could you explain to me the difference between unaccounted for and, I guess, leakage? I think you spoke about that in the past. Maybe it was you, Jack. I have another question, too.
I mean, in a nutshell, unaccounted for, we don't know where it goes.
Yeah.
So leakage is unaccounted for.
Yeah.
Everything else we meter, or in the report to the DEP, we estimate.
So let me give you an example. Are all the schools metered?
Yes.
And do we count that every time?
They're not billed, but we
Yeah.
know the water going into the bill. We know the water going into parks, landscape deltas, city hall. So we know where that water's going. We don't bill for it, though.
Okay. And what's, I know we're here tonight because we see, we heard about a 19% increase, which is, I don't think, any longer the case. But just sitting here calculating, I think we're actually we may find this and may find that we have to pay for it anyways because it's getting used. But on $1 per resident, Everett's spending $113 per resident. Arlington's spending $111 per resident. This is water only. I need to understand the sewer piece more. Boston is spending $116 per resident. We're spending $102 per resident, and Medford's spending $98.67 per resident. So we clearly got to get these, large percentage increases in check so that we don't go above those. But when you look at comparable cities, our charge per resident would suggest that even when we find this, it's probably being used. It isn't running in lakes, based upon those figures. Again, if dollars are related, I don't have the cubic feet that comes through, or the, per resident for each city, but dollars on the water side are related to cubic feet. So that would suggest per resident, these communities are still using, by and large, some of them, percentages more than us. They just happen to run into a year where their increase in percentage was less. But this would tell me that we're not doing such a bad job, and actually, comparatively speaking, we've been able to keep it down. And it may actually be usage that we're just not understanding, and it will be usage later. The cost may be split to different people, and it should be. But just to, I hope we don't jump into something and then not get what we thought we were going to get. But, so thank you. Bob, one more question. It had to do with getting back to the streets.
Yep.
I was in the back room. I've seen your presentation before, and Jack, you can stay here for this. But, as a ward councilor, I've had a number of streets done. Columbia Street comes to mind. And I was absolutely led to believe that, and I know you don't like the term, but the zipper was put in, and that that is not how it was going to be left, and it wasn't going to take additional funds, but that the whole street would be paved. It may not be paved to the, if the street was in rough shape, it may not be paved to the level that we might like it to be, but that indeed that patch was there, it was left to settle, and then you were going to come back and it was going to be done. That wasn't going to cost us any more money. And now tonight I'm hearing that we got to go out to bond to be able to do that. Can you explain to me, because I am thoroughly confused at this point?
The original process through the SRF, the State Revolving Fund, pays for what they call an overlay process, or an overlay coat. So you go in, you replace the water main, you put the temporary patch in, the zigzag that we've been talking about, or the zipper that we've been talking about, and then let it sit for a year, come back the next spring, and put what they call an overlay coat, a very thin coat.
That's over the whole street?
Over the whole street, curb to curb.
So the streets are going to get repaved regardless of what we decide? Doesn't mean they're going to be done to a level people might, love over a certain amount of time, but they are going to be repaved.
And what we did when we went out and did the construction and started working, we have monthly meetings with Mayor Christensen's office, and what we've been doing, working with the mayor and his staff, is looking at how we can best reconstruct the roads. So when you look at that list of 30 or so streets that were fixed in the first year, 32 roughly, there's about 3/4 of that list we can reprioritize the monies so that we can put that overlay coat on, but if there are small areas where the road's in really tough shape, we can do a small patch or a small repair and fix those streets. What Mayor Christensen pushed us very hard to do, and he and we went to DEP to get some of their approval for, is to reallocate some of the monies for the roads that were in really tough shape, so that those roads could, instead of putting a coat of paint on it for whitewashing the road and having it fall apart in a year or two, it's much more prudent for the city to fix the underlying foundation.
So if the road is really in rough shape, and I commend the mayor for, going after this, and we should put more into maintenance and less into the operating budget, just one person's opinion. And Mayor Christensen thought that when he was a councilor. So I'm glad to see we're going to try to do this. But I just want it to be clear to the people out there who do have the zipper, one way or the other, their street's going to be repaved.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kinnon. And lastly, Councilor D'Angelo.
Thank you. Again, just to wrap this up, I appreciate the mayor, city engineer, Mr. Button, Mr. Gardner for all coming out. It's great, and I'm sure going forward we'll have good things. But again, to me, any money that we're spending that we're not getting something out of, we just can't have that in this economic climate. The people at home can't handle it, the burden. Collectively, we can't handle the burden. So it's incumbent upon all of us to figure out how we can minimize that as much as possible, and in the future just try to eliminate that completely. It's millions of gallons of water a year. If this was electrical, if this was any other utility, we would be, screaming at the top of our lungs to Verizon or Comcast, or at least I would be, to Verizon or Comcast or to whatever utility that would be. So, water is the basis for all life. We have to have it here. And if we're going to do any of the developments we're talking about, whether it be downtown, whether it be across town, whatever the case may be, we need to make sure that we have that as a viable resource, because at the end of the day, we can talk about dollars and cents and flows and gallons and everything else. We need it, and we need a quality, reliable water supply on both the supply side and the other side. So we just got to get a handle on this. So, Madam President, I volunteer, as the mayor expressed, to have somebody. I'd volunteer for that, because to me, we got to make this a priority. We just can't keep losing millions of dollars a year on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor D'Angelo. And from the chair, I do want to say thank you to everyone. I know it's been a long night. The mayor, Chuck, sits here as well, and the folks from the commission, Jeff, Mr. Gardner, Bob Button. I definitely think that, we found the information more informative. I think it helped. There was a conversation going on earlier today with questions related to what was changing in terms of, you know, the costs that we were going to have as a burden to manage. And it is a bit refreshing to have seen some of that number, that percentage change from, as Councilor Kinnon said and I did in the opening comments, that, you know, we heard it ranges from 8 to 19%. So I think, you know, we're hearing a manageable, but not necessarily favorable. It's still an increase. And there will be a set of charges we have to deal with from the public side of the obligation. But I do want to thank you all for coming tonight. I also want to relay to the mayor that I will speak with our peers. I do think we need to be at the table with you, whether it be one member or two. But I think collectively we all need to be trying to resolve this problem together and be part of the communication that's also necessary to keep us all on pretty much up to date as to what's going on. Because it is a significant number we need to attempt to get at. We need to find $1.8 million, or at least 20% of the 30% of unaccountable water. So I do want to, again, just say thank you, and we get done with the topic. There are no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next order of business.
Minutes from the meeting of June 5th and June 12th.
On Councilor Matheson's motion to approve, all in favor? Opposed? Next order.
Application for livery license. Ideal Park Limousine Service, 61 High Rock Road. The Glacier Group LLC, 500 Broadway.
On Councilor Kinnon's motion to grant, all in favor? Opposed? Next order of business.
Application for renewal of pool table licenses. Irish American, 177 West Street. Club 24, 787 Salem Street. Malden VFW, 36 Crystal Street.
On Councilor Anderson's motion to grant, all in favor? Opposed? Granted license. Next order of business.
Ordered that the city submit to the Massachusetts Legislature for passage an act authorizing the Malden Traffic Commission to establish special speed regulations on certain streets. Councilors Crowe and Bucci.
On Councilor Crow's motion to refer to ordinance, all in favor? Opposed? Ordinance.
Resolved that it is the sense of the City Council that the Traffic Commission post slow signs at the crest of the hill on Blantyre Road to warn motorists of the obstructed view. Councilor Lucy.
On Councilor Lucy's motion to pass, all in favor? Opposed? Passes. Next order of business.
Resolved that it is the sense of the City Council that the city communicate with potential developers of proposed Suffolk Downs Casino Complex, that the city is open to discussions relative to the development of related economic activities in our community. Councilor D'Angelo.
Councilor D'Angelo for the paper.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask all the councilors to consider that we do this and vote positively on this, because recent news has indicated that it's likely there will be a casino at Suffolk Downs. It seems like that's a reasonable possibility. And, you know, by all accounts, if you look, I've got a map here. Thank you to Steve Fama from GIS. If you look, really, you can see that, you can pass it down, Councilor, that, you know, the boundary of our city is only a couple of miles away. And this, from where we sit right here, is only, I think it's, what, 4 miles away? 4.24 miles. Here, I'll pass that one down. 4.24 miles away from the gates of this new casino complex, which is going to be a $1 billion complex, which is going to impact the infrastructure on the east side of our city significantly, particularly Route 1, Broadway, several of the other streets in and around there. So I think we should, it's coming whether we want it or not. That's not the issue. And this is not a referendum on casino gambling, nothing like that. I guess my thing would be, let's embrace this with the developer, see if we can get a seat at the table, and let them know that this is a very significant economic development opportunity, happens just a couple of miles away, and we're a willing partner. This is not saying yes or no to casino gambling. This is not that issue. Just to be clear, Again, I think if we can send a message, we have the potential to really have some revenue coming into the city potentially that really wouldn't cost the city too much, or I would argue the gains would outweigh whatever detractors there were. So I think we should do this and send a message. They've been turned away from many other communities, and I think if they have a welcome from a community, that could help them place facilities here that are accessory to the casino use, workers to work in that facility, whether it be a hotel restaurant complex over there, a casino complex, whatever the case may be. Let's let them know that Malden is open and ready for business. Thank you.
On Councilor D'Arcangelo's motion to pass, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes.
Resolved as the sense of City Council that the Traffic Commission install a raised crosswalk at the intersection of College Ave and Beachview Ave. Councilor Kinnon.
On Councilor Kinnon's motion to pass, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Resolved as the sense of City Council that the Traffic Commission study and take steps to remediate speeding on Beachview Ave. Councilor Kinnon.
On Councilor Kinnon's motion to pass, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Resolved as the sense of the City Council that the Traffic Commission post slow children signs on the east and west side of Webster Street at the intersection of Webster Place. Councilor Kinnon.
On Councilor Kinnon's motion to pass, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Resolved that it is the sense of the City Council that the city explore options for non-sewer water usage. Councilor Altrino.
Councilor Altrino, good paper.
Thank you, Madam President. This is just a quick resolve that came from other residents, and as well as when I was working in other cities. Some cities and towns have this option that if you're watering your garden or you're filling your pool or you have a sprinkler system installed to do your shrubbery or your grass, that there are options where the individual payer would pay for the meter but wouldn't be charged a sewage tax on that. Building I oversee in another community has that option, and I think Malden should explore that at least to alleviate those that want to keep their lawns or pools full and their lawns nice. So just ask the council to support in forwarding this. Thank you.
Seeing no questions on Councilor Altrino's motion to pass, all in favor? Opposed? Passes.
Are you opposed? That will be a nay.
Nay.
I'm sorry.
It's a nay.
Yours was a nay. I'll fix that, Jim. The claim of Jill Kozlowski, 173 Coleman Street.
On Council Lucy's motion to refer to finance, all in favor? Opposed?
The Standing Committee on License, to whom was referred paper number 249A, series of 2012, having considered the same, make the following report. Application for secondhand dealer's license, Peroni Jewelers, 22 Eastern Ave. Committee recommends that this license be granted. Councilor Anderson for the committee.
On Councilor Anderson's motion to receive the committee report, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? On Councilor Anderson's motion to grant, all in favor? Opposed? Granted. Next order of business.
The Standing Committee on Finance, to whom was referred paper number 257, series of 2012, having considered the same, make the following report. Ordered that the city submit to the Massachusetts Legislature for passage an act amending the administrative organization of financial officers in the city of Malden. Committee recommends that this paper be reported out favorably with the following amendment by adding a new section as follows. Section 11 of Chapter 169 of the Acts of 1881 as most recently amended by Chapter 200 of the Acts of 2011, is hereby further amended by striking out the phrase, providing that when reconsidering the election of the assessor, city clerk, controller, solicitor, or treasurer, the election shall stand if agreed to by 2/3 of the members present and voting, and inserting in place thereof the phrase, provided that when reconsidering the election of an assessor, city clerk, controller, solicitor, or treasurer, the election shall stand if agreed to by a majority of the members present and voting. Councilor Lucy for the committee.
Councilor Lucy?
Thank you, Madam President. Took this up in finance for several weeks now. It's unfortunately, you know, we did go to the legislature about a year or so ago, and they put a home rule petition in for us and changed the charter. And what we're trying to do now is trying to expand on the CFO. So the CFO right now it's limited to CFO treasurer. We're trying to expand that to CFO treasurer, CFO controller, CFO assessor, or CFO. And we are also asking the council to consider to change any mayor's veto from 2/3 to override a mayor's veto from 2/3 to a majority. So it was voted out 5-0 tonight in finance, and I would ask the full council to support it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Kinnon.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and I intend on voting against this evening, and the reason I intend on voting against it is because under this paper, the controller, the assessor, the treasurer, and the CFO will all be appointed by the City Council and all only be terminated by the City Council. It is the same reason I voted against the paper last year, because the structure is not how any financial person would actually set up a financial structure. That said, I also think we didn't advertise properly, and I think we're jumping the gun and looking a little bit silly